So now we'll move on. And one rough start to the football season this year is that the Big Ten Conference has decided that they're going to cancel the fall 2020 college football season with hopes of playing it out in the spring of 2021. When they initially said that they were just going to do a conference only season this year, and they already had the schedule all laid out, and then they just went up and canceled it. So this is, and with lots of other college teams pulling out of competition for 2020, it's really putting in jeopardy the whole college football season in whole. And as of right now, there are still 89 teams out of the whole 130 FBS teams to play in 2020. But there's still the whole SEC is trying to possibly start their own like conference in the South, basically, and play their own football league or something. I haven't looked into it too much, but I've heard a lot about that as well. So, Jimmy, I guess, what do you think about how the NCAA is handling this football season? And or just some NCAA teams are handling this? And do you think that this may put in jeopardy the NFL season at all?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to affect the NFL season for a couple of reasons.
Hmm.
One is the NFL has the huge advantage of having a players' union that they
Yeah.
can negotiate with. Once the players' union signs off on something, then the NFL is pretty covered from a legal and ethical standpoint.
Hmm.
The NCAA doesn't have that advantage. So, one of the big theories why the Big Ten, Pac 12 canceled the season is the fear of litigation, the fear of just criticism if a player has a bad outcome.
Yep.
So I think this is just a really tough situation for everybody. And I really understand the reluctance to recommend football if you're on a medical advisory board.
Hmm.
We're in such a hypercritical, hyper litigious society that if anything bad happens to a player, you can face backlash. It can affect your career. It can affect your standing in the public or with medical boards.
Yep.
It's a very tough position to put a medical advisory board in.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that's the biggest difference between the NFL and the NCAA is that they have not only just the college football and the college players to think about, they have the campus and all of the students and all of the faculty and all of that to consider as well. And as you mentioned, they don't have a union or someone they can go to fight for them or represent them, then give them the proper and make sure that the proper safety protocols are in place for them and that they can play without fear of catching it as the NFL is doing right now.
So what's the main concern? The main concern appears to be this myocarditis issue.
Mhm.
Uh, so let's just talk about that real quick. The term myocarditis, it simply means inflammation of the heart muscle.
Yeah.
You add itis to anything, it means inflammation, like tendonitis. The inflammation by itself isn't necessarily concerning, but if there's injury to the muscle, permanent injury, then obviously that is a much much
Yeah.
more serious concern. So the question is, how big of a deal is this myocarditis? And I think it's just way too early to know how worrisome it is. We aren't even sure that the COVID virus is responsible for the myocarditis.
Mhm.
As a lot of people know, correlation doesn't mean causation. Does this SARS-CoV-2 virus, which is the COVID virus, does it actually invade the cardiac muscle? That's unclear still. It's not known to be the type of virus that does that, whereas there are actually other viruses that are known to
Mhm.
invade the cardiac muscle. So maybe it's a totally different virus causing the cardiac issues. And even if there is some cardiac inflammation or injury, does it actually cause long-term ramifications? Is it something that's clinically significant or not? We don't know the answers to a lot of these questions
That
at this point.
Yeah, that's the biggest problem is nobody knows the long-term effects of how this is going to affect players. Like you said, nobody knows how myocarditis is going to affect it long term. As you mentioned, if it's going to affect more injury prone in that muscle area or certain heart related issues going forward, maybe 5-10 years down the road, nobody knows because we're still dealing with it currently. So that's why players are especially concerned about this or catching this.